Welcome to the WMNF Afternoon Call-In Show, Last Call. I'm Sean Kinane. In a moment, we'll open up the phone lines to take your calls at 813-239-9663. You can also email your questions or your comments to dj@wmnf.org. And we got a couple of calls about what that last speaker was, and let me tell you where you can find that talk. That was Terrence McKenna, and you can find that talk on the website kpfa.org. And look for letters and politics. And again, the speaker's name was Terrence McKenna. And before we get started, I want to remind listeners that they have until December 31st to make a tax-deductible donation to keep community radio strong in the Tampa, Sarasota, St. Petersburg area. Well, today on Last Call, we're going to talk about Florida's new education commissioner. As you heard on our 4 o'clock news, the State Board of Education ousted Indiana School Superintendent Tony Bennett today. Joining me is public education advocate Susan Smith. Welcome back to the Last Call, Susan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And you were at the interviews of those 3 finalists yesterday. We're going to play some audio shortly, but tell us, what were your impressions of the process and of the candidates?
Well, I could tell who they were going to select yesterday at the interview process. I think it was very clear going in that they already had chosen the candidate they wanted to be the new commissioner. I think too it was really telling to me that the Board of Education thinks that they have a communication problem with all the anti-testing sentiment that's out in the community. That was a question that came up over and over and over again, was how do we deal with this anti-testing sentiment that's almost becoming conventional wisdom. I think it is conventional wisdom. I think they don't see it as a policy problem, they see it as a communication problem. So that was another eye-opener for me.
And so the FCAT, which is one of the tests, is really unpopular, and they're replacing it with a different type of test, which I think Bennett is familiar with. And you're implying that they think it's more of an image problem rather than a problem with the whole idea of tests. And I gather you feel differently?
I do. I think all of the so-called reform efforts that are going on in this country are not reforming anything. I think they're harming public education. They're harming our children. They're not based on science of any kind or any kind of research. I think they're being guided by the business community, and I think there is an ulterior motive in most cases behind everything that's being done.
I want to give out the phone number again. It's 813-239-9663. You can also email us at dj@wmnf.org if you'd like to email us. And we're going to go to some audio right now of Mr. Bennett. New Florida Education Commissioner Tony Bennett was interviewed by Janelle Irwin today after he was offered the job. And Janelle asked him what he planned to do about the faulty teacher evaluation system in Florida, specifically referring to the inaccurate results. And this was his answer in its entirety.
There are a number of issues. You know, I made this comment yesterday during the interview. I think you have
monitor
to
up,
take a
please.
look at what
Good for this.
all of the discussion.
Monitor up a little. Yeah, you can do one more.
On that specific instance, were there problems in the department that we have to address? And I think first and foremost, the department must become credible and make sure that what we do is accurate and is done in the most transparent.
We're going to take a call from someone who's probably a right winger. So
we also have to help local districts with their capacity. You heard some of the local superintendents talk about capacity building in their local districts. We have to talk about that. That's another issue. And the last thing we have to take a look at, and we have to be willing to do that, is we have to take a look at legislation. Is the legislation one that needs to be tweaked? And so, just as I said yesterday during the interview, I think we have to address this issue with the mentality that everything's on the table to discuss.
So that was his response to the Florida's faulty teacher evaluation system. Susan Smith, what do you think about his answer?
I think that the value-added model of teacher evaluation has not proven to be successful where it's been tried. I think it's a faulty system. It is bad policy. It's bad legislation. We knew that going in. A lot of the things that were predicted by superintendents along the way during the process when it was being passed, those things have come to fruition, and we saw it with these last teacher evaluations. I think it's also interesting. I was doing some background work on Dr. Bennett, and I saw, he was just defeated in this position up in Indiana. The people up there said no to this, the agenda, the destruction of public education by Dr. Bennett and Mitch Daniels, the governor up there during this last election. He was handily defeated by the parents and the teachers and the citizens of Indiana. So, we took him down here because I guess we'll take Jeb Bush's failed policies again, because he's Jeb Bush's man. He's the head of the Chiefs for Change, Jeb Bush's superintendent's group. And I think this was, this is where he came running to after he was kicked out of Indiana. That's what I think. But I think, too, it was very interesting. Right at the very end of his term, he pushed through legislation to lower the standards for teachers. So we get these, we get him talking out of both sides of his mouth. They want high-performing teachers, and they want qualified teachers, yet they lowered the standards. He did it on his way out the door in Indiana.
And we're going to go to the phones in just a second. Allison is on the line, but before we go to Allison, I wanted to ask you about the defeat. You mentioned that he was defeated by the voters of Indiana, and he's a Republican, but it wasn't that he was swept out because the Democrats took over Indiana. Mitt Romney won Indiana, and yet this Republican was still defeated for education, presumably because of his policies.
People are not happy with these policies. We're seeing it in Florida. The parent groups oppose the expansion of charters. The voucher plan was handily defeated in Florida this last the last election. We've seen the parent trigger bill go down in defeat, although it's coming back, and I would warn, I'm not sure what name they're going to call it. It'll be parent empowerment on steroids or something, but it's really a parent trigger, and it's meant to deceive the parents into handing over their public schools to unaccounted, unelected people.
All right, Allison, you're on the air. What would you like to say?
I want to say I definitely agree with the comments that were made earlier about the FCAT too. And I'll have to say that you can't replace a test with another test and make everybody happy. But I think we test our students to death, and we have so many teachers that are held accountable for the results of the test, so they're teaching to the test. We also, at the same time, we're giving our students FCAT. I'm a parent, I'm not a teacher, but at the same time that the students are taking FCAT tests, they're also taking norm reference testing, which is a test that's on a national scale. So why not just do the norm reference testing and leave it alone? Because I think that would give us a better evaluation of what our kids are capable of across the country. Also, as far as the teacher evaluations are concerned, I know a couple of people who have been teachers who have had evaluations, and the evaluations are not helpful from what I have seen, because the people who were actually evaluating them didn't stay in the room the entire time that the teachers were being evaluated, and they wrote up their results based on a very small amount of time spent with these teachers, and it just doesn't seem fair or reasonable. It just really doesn't seem. It seems very subjective.
I think one of the most the strongest messages for me that came out of the Chicago teacher strike last fall was this statement: the work environment for teachers is the learning environment for children. When you put everybody under this high stakes testing and you make the stakes so dependent on this one day, this one test, or this one or two observations that teachers have with somebody that may not have as much experience as they have, then you're asking for problems, and nobody objects to being evaluated. That's not what the issue here. It's the fact that the evaluation, the forms they're using, the forms of evaluation they're using are not valid. They're just not valid.
Thank you so much for that call, Allison. We're going to go now to Jack in St. Pete. Hi, Jack.
Everybody never seems to talk about. Virtually every kid in school in Florida today started after Jeb Bush became governor. 14 years ago, Jeb Bush became governor, and have we seen any radical improvement in education? All we've seen is more and more complaining that it's getting worse and worse. When are we going to stop beating this dead horse?
So are you saying that that we're giving Jeb not enough credit for the bad things, or too much emphasis on the bad things?
What I'm saying is that apparently whatever he's doing ain't working.
Susan, what would you say to that?
I don't think what they're doing is meant to work. I think it's meant to privatize and corporatize our schools. I think it's meant to turn over public resources to big corporations or to somebody that can make money and feed at the public trough. I think that's behind a lot of it. I think there are a lot of misguided people like Bill Gates who, he's a billionaire who thinks because he's got a lot of money that he has the answers. And I don't think he has the answers to education reform. I'm not even sure we need so much reform. I was reading today an interesting article because of these new test scores that have come out, the international scores. And there's a doctor, and I know I'm going to butcher his name, Dr. Yang Zhou, I believe is his name, Z-H-A-O. And he wrote this great column, very long, in-depth, numbers, numbers everywhere. But he talks about how when we look at these international standards, what are we really looking at? Are we looking just at numbers on a piece of paper, or are we looking at results? Because if we want to use tests to predict the future, back in the 60s when I was in school, they told us we were behind the Soviet Union and our country was going to fall apart. Well, there is no Soviet Union today, and we're still going strong. They told us back in the 80s that Japan was going to eat our lunch in terms of the economy and being a world leader, and they keep falling farther behind, and they're actually trying to do what we do in our schools, which what we've done and what we're getting away from is the creative entrepreneurial types of education that develop that that paradigm that is what has served us so well in the past, and we're getting away from that. We're trying to create a nation of automatons and workers, and I think that's where this. I was asking you when I came in if you had read Chris Hayes' book, Twilight of the Elites. It's about America's meritocracy, and I think that book is very telling, even though it's not even about education, of kind of where we are with this. The billionaires know best. If you make a lot of money, you have all the answers. That's just not what we've got the wrong goals in this country and the wrong priorities.
We're kind of seeing something similar to that in Michigan, where the billionaires essentially are deciding that it should become a right-to-work state, and they convince the governor to change his mind about that. But I don't want to get too far off topic.
Well,
I
just think that it proves they're all going too far. They're pushing this in ways it should not be pushed. The parents in Florida are fighting back, and I think that's a wonderful thing. They fought back in Indiana, and they're going to fight back here.
Well, thank you so much for that call, Jack. We're going to go now to Francis in Largo. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Francis.
Doing great. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing well. I am a teacher for Pinellas County Schools. Interesting guest, interesting topic. I could go on and on about the value-added model, but I'm going to refrain from using any foul language on your airwaves. I can say that I haven't seen anything like this that's been such a terrible beatdown for us as teachers as far as morale in my career. I've been teaching for about 13 years now, and it's broken, and I don't see it really being able to be fixed. Also, I just want to leave you with this. I'll hang up so I can listen to your guest comment on Finland and what they are doing as far as their model for education and basically their lack of testing.
Thank you, Francis. Thanks for calling. And Finland, tell us about that.
Well, they don't have FCATs. They don't have high-stakes tests. I think they respect their teachers. They have highly qualified teachers. They pick the best and the brightest, and they honor their teachers. And in this country, we have no respect. We don't show them any honor. And I think a big part of it goes back to our country having this priority that the people who, not a priority, so, well, it is a priority of whoever makes the most money is the most valuable person. And we don't think teachers, for some reason, maybe because they choose to go into a profession that's not highly paid, maybe that's where the lack of respect is coming. And I think it's time for a whole shift of attitudes towards teachers in this country.
Well, thank you for that call, Francis. We're going to go now to Nicole in Dunedin. Hi, Nicole.
To agree with most of the opinions that I've heard and say that FCAT gets an F and it's time to make some bumper stickers and t-shirts. And also I wanted to encourage people to look into Waldorf education. We have a Waldorf school here in North Pinellas County, and there's none of the FCAT testing and that type of thing. It's a really amazing school.
Nicole, thanks for bringing that up. We've done shows about that in the past. What do you know, Susan, about Waldorf
You know,
education?
I'm not that familiar with it, but I think it is a direction that's worth looking into. I come from a background in child development, and I know we used to talk about things like developmentally appropriate practices with children. There was one candidate yesterday who actually used that word. Dr. Bennett did not use that word. Another, he talked about one of the things he was proudest of was the grading system they put in. And anytime somebody tells me they like an A to F system, I can't imagine somebody even saying that they want to see their schools fail or that they want to see those F grades. To me, if you're having, I don't know, it's the wrong approach to take with children. And I think we need to get back to talking to educators and let them talk about what needs to be done and not talk to business and corporate people.
My guest is Susan Smith. She's an advocate for public education here in the Tampa Bay area. My name is Sean Kinane. You're listening to Last Call. It's 5:50 in the afternoon on 88.5 FM in Tampa. And I want to thank Nicole for calling, and we'll go now to Sam in Brandon. Hi, Sam.
My joke is complaining about Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush has done a lot for these children here in Florida. And I think what Rick Scott, who is following up for his re-election, is doing the same thing. He is forced science and math in school. And I think what former Governor Chris is trying to change parties to disrupt what Governor Snyder is doing.
All right. Well, thanks for letting us know how you feel, Sam. And so, tell us, Susan, do you think that what we're being too hard on Jeb here, and that the policies of Rick Scott and the policies of Jeb Bush, the legacy policies of Jeb Bush, are helping the students, as Sam is pointing out?
No, absolutely not. I think they're destructive to students and they're destructive to the public school system. The big question we need to look at in this country, and what the discussion we need to be having, is, do we value public education? Because if we do, we're not acting like it. We're not trying to save it, we're trying to destroy it, or we're letting other people destroy it. I see Jeb Bush as public enemy number one of public education. And he's leading the way across the country. It's not just here in Florida. He has this reputation about this great Florida miracle, and that's been dispelled totally. It didn't happen.
813-239-9663 or dj@wmnf.org if you'd like to join this conversation. Thank you for calling, Sam, and I want to read an email from Lloyd in Lakeland. Lloyd says, what the country really needs in this age is a constitutional amendment that literally spells out the requirements, educational and practical experience a person must have to run for a federal elected office. This would help get some of the idiots we elect to represent us to weed out, rather. He says, what are your qualifications for the job? What do you do to promote the Commonwealth? It should be a job interview, not a popularity contest, is Lloyd's solution in Lakeland. And you can send us your comments to dj@wmnf.org, or you can call us, just like just like Mac in Tampa has done. Hi, Mac.
Hi, Mac.
Of this whole thing, because I have a kid who just started kindergarten this year. So coming in with a fresh view of how everything works, first thing I see is that it's not just